Hey guys, just thinking a little bit more about contemplation and the power that it has to change your life and to bring really a lot of spiritual growth in a short amount of time. I think most of us have been down the track of the learning and the listening and the participating in church and scriptures and studies and all that sort of stuff, which is fantastic and really gives you a great basis for your faith and builds a very strong container for your self-life. You know who you are, you know where you stand with God, you're in, with your theology and everything, and you're really in a good place. But something seems to be lacking, doesn't it? Somewhere deep inside ourselves we still feel a sense of dissatisfaction and a disconnect, I think, from spirit in a lot of ways. And so got a feeling that maybe the contemplative life, the slower lifestyle of slowing down and getting in touch with our deeper inner spirit, perhaps maybe a key element there in how we find the deeper walk with God. How we find freedom, really, because freedom is really something we're all craving, where, we find ourselves very much in bondage to doing and being and running around and having to do stuff. And we often miss that deeper sense of connectedness, both with spirit, with people, with places like this. We sort of miss that connection, so that we feel a disconnect in ourselves. We feel like we've got, how could I explain, I guess, compartments in ourselves. Perhaps there's a compartment where your spiritual life lives. Maybe there's a compartment in yourself where you have your relationships with other people. You might have your work compartment, your emotional compartment, where you've kind of shoved a lot of your stuff in there. And I think the contemplative life is more about integrating those compartments, if you like. So there's an integration that goes on within ourselves that brings together the different parts in a more holistic way. So to think about that, it's just to, like, how would that work? Well, basically, as we go into ourselves, this is where all the compartments are. They're not actually compartments. They've just been parts that we've made into compartments. So there's not that much that has to break down. The integration happens as we allow ourselves to stop running and to let down the walls within ourselves that are those, I guess, our personally made compartments. Now, we've needed those things for a while, for a purpose, and they're good. Compartments are okay. They're good. They keep things manageable. They keep things in control for us when sometimes life is too stressful. Particularly when you're younger, compartments are great when there's been, abuse or stress. There's a lot of stuff going on, but we need those deeper parts of ourselves. And as we grow, we can now face some of those more challenging parts of our past, if you like. Some of those things that have really held us. And we can begin to, I guess, slowly bring them out, but allowing them to be in a gentle way. And I think this is what the inner life is all about. It's about going and sitting with yourself, sitting with God, sitting with spirit, and allowing a kind of a counselling flow. Remember that the spirit is the counsellor. The Spirit of God comes to us as our personal, intimate ally, our counsellor that knows us inside and out and is able to work with us. Gently, it seems like that's been my experience for sure. There's a real gentleness about it. It's very much at our pace. It's very much as we open up one of these compartments, for example, there's a movement of spirit into that area. It brings a refreshment, brings new perspective, perhaps, that we hadn't been able to see before. Helps us to forgive, to let go, to release some of the pressure that we've done by, I guess, holding it in like this, in those compartments. As we release that to spirit in a quiet, contemplative space, we begin to, I guess, reframe things and to see them in a different light. But it also changes things in our brain. There's actual changes in the brain chemistry when we get into a more meditative, contemplative space. So as we do that, people have done these studies on the brain, and as you get into this deeper parts of yourself using breathing, stillness, quietness. Sometimes you might begin to recite a particular scripture or something that you have that's been on your heart that you might like to speak over to yourself, to begin to get yourself out of your head, out of your monkey mind and into something more deeper. And as you do that, There can be a real sense of peace, and that peace is basically what you're looking for to change your brain chemistry from fight or flight stuff that's taken you into compartmentalizing things in the first place, but it's not working for you anymore. So there's a lot of things going on in our head, there's a lot of things going on in our hearts, and the ability to come down and to be still, to find a true stillness, much like the ocean is still. Even though the waves are breaking, there's a great stillness here. You might be able to hear the waves, but there's a great stillness out all the way out to the horizon. The beach, the sand, as you come here, it's a slower pace. Everything comes back down, and as we come back down to that pace, we begin to see that we can change some of our thinking, our mindsets, be renewed or be transformed by the renewing of your mind is a great encouragement. We need to be transformed. And our minds need to be renewed so that we can see the world through, I guess, through different eyes. Because so much of what we see is marred by our own experiences and how much we've compartmentalized things. And so we're not whole in a lot of ways. We're actually broken open, and we're sort of shattered in a lot of ways. And the Spirit's work does seem to be about bringing us back together, reconciling, restoring, bringing back, remaking the human, remaking us, renewing of our mind. We're actually participating with Spirit in allowing our areas of our life that have been locked down to become open, so that there's now like a fresh breeze of Spirit flowing through. Coming in line with those beautiful rhythms of grace I was talking about the other day, the unforced rhythms of grace. What a beautiful way of looking at it. Unforced, the rhythm. You can hear the rhythm here down at the beach. It's beautiful. As I begin to move in that, I find myself getting into a much deeper, much quieter, much more reflective, much more peaceful state that takes me out of the stresses of my everyday life. And that's what life is here, unfortunately. There's so many stresses, so many problems that need to be solved, and things that keep coming at us from all angles at times. And it does become overwhelming, and I guess the temptation is to keep compartmentalizing, keep jamming things down. I'll get to that another day, I'll get to that. But rarely we do, rarely we get the time or the space to reflect. Can you possibly build something like this into your daily life, so that rather than racing off into every day, feeling tired and fatigued and behind the eight ball, you go into your life with a much calmer, stiller, more measured approach. You become more whole in yourself. You become more integrated with your full self and your true self, and in so doing you find a greater level of peace, both within yourself but also with those around you. Maybe there's conflict. Oftentimes there's points of conflict in our life which are really, in a way, as I've come to see over the years, particularly working with people in counselling, these points of conflict are often little pointers or reminders of the stuff that's in ourselves. We often will blame that other person, for example. Oh man, they're so annoying. Oh, they just get up my nose. You know, these people really, if only I didn't have to work with that person. But if we could zoom out in a sense and begin to see the bigger picture, I keep talking about that, don't I? Ad infinitum. But the bigger picture allows us to see that that person could definitely be a vessel of hope for us. They're actually like a trigger point that actually allows us to see what's going on in ourselves. So rather than looking at that person and trying to blame them as like, if I could just get rid of that person, I'd be fine. Well, that doesn't really work, because we get rid of them and then another person's there, another situation, another problem or situation arises that brings that same angst, that same feeling of, I guess, agitation or fear or anger or frustration. These things are invitations to go deeper down within ourselves. They're inviting us to come into those deeper parts of our heart, within a stillness, and those that have walked the contemplative path, very hard word to say that one, the contemplative path, have found that that inner stillness can then move out with them when they even leave their quiet space. That's what I found. as I leave my quiet spaces, I go into my world with a much quieter, less anxious, less fearful, far more brave and measured way of facing my life and the challenges that it brings to me. So it's quite a powerful thing, and it's been, sadly, it hasn't been really utilised by so many. Like, we keep going to meetings, we keep going to different things, looking for answers, we go to counselling, we go to, you know, seminars and all this sort of stuff, but while they give a measure of peace, we move away from those things, those people, those teachings, those opportunities, and we move back into our own lives, in our everyday, and we're still agitated, very anxious, very angry, very stressed, very resentful. It's not working. What works is that deeper, everyday change that renews our mind, renews our heart, and brings us kind of into this spiritual alignment, if you like, with ourself, with spirit, with God, with the universe, with the creation. And it's an absolutely beautiful thing. Some food for thought for you today. Thanks for listening.